Jack Lew, former Treasury Secretary under President Obama, is here with us on set to make an announcement in the crowded field of 2020 Democratic presidential candidates. He's announcing exclusively now on Closing Bell that he will endorse former Vice President Joe Biden for president. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for joining us. Great to see you.
Great to be with you.
So talk us through the reasoning. Why have you gone for Vice President Biden?
Well, I've known Joe Biden for 25 years as senator, as vice president, and as a person. I think the times we're in call for somebody with both the heart and the experience to address some very serious challenges. Joe Biden has both the heart to care and the experience to lead. He has demonstrated his deep concern for an economy that works and works for working Americans, for restoring American values, and to restore America's leadership as the global and economic leader that we need to be. He's also shown he surrounds himself with people who really are the leaders of the next generation, and that he has the ability to reach across party lines and within the Democratic Party to all parts of the Democratic Party. Candidly, he has the experience and the ability to make Donald Trump a one-term president.
But can he win?
I believe he can, yes.
Do you fear, some people have suggested that he's not as energetic, as on the ball as perhaps the vice president you worked with was at times? Does that criticism in any way bother you?
You know, I've seen Joe Biden over many years always demonstrate both the capacity and the endurance to get things done. I don't think that's any different today. You know, he's sometimes has stumbled over a word here and there, but that's not new. What matters is a record of accomplishment. It's a record that I saw in economic discussions where he always was the one who brought it back to what does this mean for the American economy and for American workers? For the global discussions, what does this mean to make America safer and to have America be the leader we need to be? Those are all the skills we need in a president.
Let's talk a little bit about what his platform is and what he thinks going forward. He wants to increase capital gains tax rate. He wants to pay for infrastructure through changing taxes on corporations and wealthy. He wants to increase existing taxes on upper income Americans. Is that the right approach for this time?
Look, I think anyone who looks at our tax code sees that there are things in it that are broken, that are unfair. The proposals to fix it are going to mean looking where it's possible for individuals and businesses to avoid taxation and addressing those. That's what tax reform really means, not just cutting rates. I think if you look at what he's stood for, it's been for the kinds of measures that make sense. You know, when I was at the Treasury Department, I didn't hear a single corporate CEO who asked for a 21% corporate tax rate. So there's room in our tax code to make changes, to raise more revenue, and to make the system more fair. And if we want to pay for the things that we need to do to address the need in this country for infrastructure, for education, you know, for health care, we're also going to have to find ways to pay for it.
Does Senator Warren and Senator Sanders go too far on those economic issues?
Look, I think there's a lot of talent in the Democratic field in this campaign. I think there's ideas that run the full gamut. My own view is that to win this election, it's going to be important for Democrats to articulate positions that can bring the Democratic Party together and also reach out. I think the kind of centrist ideas that Vice President Biden has talked about and a number of the other candidates have talked about are the way to win. I also, from my own experience working for one of the lions of the Progressive Democratic Party, Tip O'Neill, we used to call the Democratic Party a big tent. There's room in the Democratic Party for a lot of views, but you have to be able to reach across the party and sometimes across party lines.
You said at the top you believe that Vice President Biden can win. Can Senator Warren or Senator Sanders beat Donald Trump in your eyes?
Well, I've always been the policy guy. Now, as I told President Obama when I became chief of staff, don't expect me to tell you where you need to be when you're running for re-election. What I know is that in every survey that I've seen, Joe Biden is the strongest candidate nationwide. In the key states that we have to win the election, he's the strongest candidate. And I think that's actually something that Democrats care deeply about, because this is an election beyond normal importance. Having another 4 years of what we've been going through could do such deep damage that it's going to have to bring the party together.
But we have record high stock market. We have unemployment that we have not seen in 50 years. Has President Trump been great for this economy?
So, I think you won't be surprised when I say that he had inherited a pretty strong economy. We're in the 11th year of a recovery, 7 years of which happened in the Obama-Biden administration. I'm very proud to have been a part of that. I actually think this economy would be stronger today if we had a president who didn't create the kinds of anxiety and uncertainty that has led businesses to sit on their hands instead of making investments.
You mean about trade?
About trade, and that has led to geopolitical risk around the world that's kept everyone on their edge of their seats day to day, hour to hour. I don't think that's leadership. I think leadership is standing up for protecting the rights of American workers and protecting fair trade. It's about projecting American values. It's not about being soft. But I don't think that what we've seen over these last 3 years fits any definition of normal.
But you must accept, I guess, that it has scored points for the president to take on China. Would you advise, whether it's Vice President Biden or anybody else, would you advise them to continue a tough rhetoric on China in order to win this next election?
I think that we as a country have to join very difficult issues with China, as we did when I was at the table with China. There aren't any issues being discussed now that are new. I'd point out that the China deal that was reached, and I'm glad a China deal seems to have been reached because a ceasefire is better than an escalating trade war. It doesn't resolve the big issues. Those issues are still there. I think Joe Biden knows what those issues are. I think he knows how to engage China in a tough way. I think he also knows how to do it in a way that doesn't create unnecessary conflict that could get out of control, as this trade war has done.
I just want to come back to the broader, how all of this boils down to affect the economy. And you joined us here on set last on July 2017. And here's what you had to say then about the Trump economy.
We have an economy that's at full employment, and at the late cycle full employment moment, we've thrown trillions of dollars of stimulus into the economy. So that's going to burn off over time. I wouldn't sit here and predict that the economy is going to take a turn in the next month or two. There's enough kerosene on the fire to burn for a while, but when it burns off, there's going to be a problem because of the policies that have been in place.
So that was July 2018, not 17, my apologies. Are you still surprised at how well the kerosene is burning, as it were?
So I'm not surprised that we've seen the economy kind of pop up a little bit because of the kerosene, and it's come back essentially to being growing at potential GDP, just above, just below 2%. I think we could continue to grow that way for some time, and we are more likely to if we stop getting into these fights with every country, our closest allies and our adversaries, over issues that have as much to do with rhetoric as policy. I think that the trade war has actually been the biggest risk to the economy in the last 6 months to a year. I don't know. You may know better than I do where we'll be a week from now or a month from now. I don't know what he is going to do on things like the tariff decision on cars in Europe. I certainly hope that he doesn't do it, but I don't know from day to day what's going to happen now. And I don't think these decisions are driven by good economic policy. It's driven by day-to-day political decisions.
You have a few voices now who are, well, they're really like voices crying in the wilderness, who are decrying the access to cheap and easy money and our addiction to it, who are decrying the search for yield for these pension funds and 401ks that lead people to riskier and riskier bets. Do you think that there's a warning here about Fed policy and what's to come?
Look, I think that everyone in the markets, everyone who looks at the economy is in somewhat uncharted territory after seeing so many years of either zero or near zero interest rates in the major economies of the world. I do think it's something we have to keep an eye on. I actually think that if you look at going back to the tax cut, where are we now if the economy were to take a downturn? We don't have a lot of room in interest rates. We don't have a lot of room in terms of fiscal capacity. We've seen over these last 3 years all the progress made during the Obama-Biden years to get our fiscal house in order and to make sure we had the tools to fight a recession. We're now down to very few tools remaining. I have a lot of confidence in somebody like Joe Biden, who was there at the helm driving forward the American Recovery Act that helped bring us out of a recession, that helped get this economy growing again. And we couldn't have been in year 11 of growth if we hadn't gotten the first 7 under the watch of President Obama and Vice President Biden.
Although on the point of ammunition, the national debt did rise every year of Obama's presidency, and rates were very low when he left office.
But the deficit was 3% of GDP at the end. It had been 10, so we brought it down 70%.
Right. And the deficit itself has picked up. I totally accept that. But, Mr. Secretary, just pivoting, because we're going to run out of time otherwise, I want to talk about the impeachment. Given all the evidence we've heard so far, given the simple math in the Senate that we're all aware of, and given that there is an election coming very soon, do you think the impeachment process is a good idea for the Democrats?
You know, I look at the way Nancy Pelosi has led the House through this process, and there were months, years, when you could see her holding back the drive until Ukraine happened. I think that Ukraine, what the president did to use his office to influence American politics is something that I couldn't have made up before it happened. I think that this is now happening because of what the president did, not because of what Congress decided.
And if impeachment goes ahead but conviction does not, will that damage Democrats' chance in the election next year?
I actually think that the American people are going to look at the candidates and look at who represents their values, who has a better vision for where to take this country, who they want their children to look like when they grow up. And I think somebody like Joe Biden will win that contest, hands down.
Well, on that note, Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for joining us and bringing us your endorsement for 2020.
Good
Always
to be
a pleasure
with you.
to see you.